what does this, current inflationary environment mean? Well, look, it will likely result in an increasing gold price over the next, say, decade or so. I can feel it in my bones, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier in this call is that I think this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity. I think it's very realistic. We could see a price north of $5,000, perhaps even $10,000.
Inflation is through the roof. The world is literally on fire, and there's only one thing that can protect us. That's a shield made of metal, gold and silver. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a titan in the industry here to talk to you today. It's time to get prepared. Let's go.
One stacker on a journey to find silver. International Stacker.
Hey guys, International Stacker back here again with a very special guest. We're going to jump right into this, but first, let me introduce to all of you watching. And by the way, subscribe, don't hit it, smash the like button, and let's continue with this video. I've got here the honor of introducing Dr. Quinton Hennigh. He is an advisor and technical consultant for investments in relation to gold and silver resource companies for Crescat Capital, which is a global macro asset management firm. Dr. Hennigh actually became an economic geologist after obtaining his PhD, so that's why we call him doctor, in geology and geochemistry from the Colorado School of Mines. He has more than 30 years of experience in exploration with major gold mining firms, which include firms like Homestake Mining, Newcrest Mining, and Newmont Mining. Recently, Dr. Hennigh founded a group, or actually a corporation, called Novo Resources Corp, and serves as the chairman. That's enough of me speaking about you. Dr. Hennigh, I'm going to turn it over to yourself. Welcome to the channel, and I'll open the floor for you. What do you want to tell the folks?
Oh, well, thank you very much. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be here. And I guess I'd start by saying, it's an honor to interview with you. This is the first time we've done so. I like talking about geology. I have a pretty broad background in both large mining companies as well as junior mining companies. And lately, I've gotten involved with Crescat Capital as their lead geotechnical and geologic advisor. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be investing in a number of junior mining companies, especially in this day and age, because I do think we're on the cusp of a major commodity boom, particularly in the gold and silver space. So, I can take a collective 30-odd year experience in major mining companies and juniors and apply that to investing in the future junior explorers and hopefully discoverers of our next generation of gold and silver deposits.
You framed that interesting, because my very first question to you, and I promise folks, I haven't run these questions by him, but he answered the first one basically, was if you take your entire 30 years in the industry of gold and silver, what is your excitement level at the point of history we're in right now? Is it like a 10? Is it a 2? Like, how excited are you with gold and silver at this current time based on your entire experience?
That's a perfect question. Look, when I grew up, it was the 1970s, early 1980s, and I got to see the ravages of inflation. A lot of people, alive today, especially younger people, have no idea of inflation, its impact on people, their budgets, their household budgets and otherwise. And it's absolutely profound. It can have a big impact on what people, their choices about basic needs, food and mortgages and gasoline for the car and things like this. And, I would say that we are entering a time that's very similar to the 1970s, but it's also a bit different too. In the 1970s, we did not have the amount of debt we have today. And that's not just debt, at the national levels, debt at the state and the corporate and the personal levels. I mean, basically, we are just absolutely swimming in debt today. And I think this is going to accentuate an already painful situation, with the present inflation. Is how are we going to deal with this debt? I mean, basically, I think you're seeing an inevitable monetization of debt. And what does it result in? Well, higher gold and silver price. So as far as my attitude towards precious metals going forward, and really commodities as a whole. Very excited. It almost feels like I grew up in the time period I did because it was setting me up for this opportunity right now. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity for people who are paying attention to what's happening in the precious metal space to start investing in this area.
Now, when did you first get into gold and silver? And was it always mining companies, or did you ever collect coins or stack physical gold and silver? What got you into it?
Actually, I grew up partly here in Colorado, where I live currently. And, my family members would take me up into the mountains. Usually on the weekends, we go to old mining dumps and old mines and prospects. And I like learn how to prospect there. And in fact, I started working underground at a gold mine in Colorado when I was 16. I worked there several years, and then on through college in the summer times to help pay my way through college. But it also gave me the experience of learning what different occupations there are in mining. Whether it was mining itself or mining engineering or geology. And I was very fortunate to work with a very interesting, very creative geologist, I'll say, while I was working at that mine. And that's when I decided this is the way I wanted to go. So really, I decided at an early age that I wanted to go into this field, in particular, into the realm of exploration. I like going out and looking for new discoveries.
With your job, it's very rare, I think, geologists of your caliber really get interviewed on specific gold and silver channels. And there's so much that geologists do for projects, for companies. What's your elevator pitch to somebody who would have no clue? Like, why is having a renowned geologist involved in companies or even just stakes or whatever? Why is it so critical? And what does a good geologist bring to the table?
Well, look, the the geologic decisions that are made. I mean, that question, I guess, is multifaceted. I guess if I had to sum it up within a mining company, a geologist's value is in their ability to go out and explore and find new deposits, but also to help mine those deposits. Geologists are very critical in the mining phase of a deposit. But in terms of investing, look, listening to experienced geologists can help tremendously, especially at the retail level. People who don't know much about mining, listen and learn. I'm a very strong advocate for investors to learn as much as possible before they put money into the junior mining space. It is an area where, most people do not have experience. There's a lot of very detailed and technical aspects to this business. It's not just the rocks in the ground, but there's other things like geophysics and geochemistry and metallurgy. And today, even, we have social relations, like relations with local communities and indigenous populations. We have ESG. We have all sorts of things to consider. And, geologists live and breathe it. So, I'm able to talk quite a bit about many different facets of the mining industry. And, hopefully it does some good. Hopefully it helps people gain knowledge and make better decisions when it comes time to invest in these companies.
Now, in terms of your job, obviously, I'm sure your job has changed a lot over the years with technology and the technologies we have now compared to, even 5 years ago, but 10, 20 years ago, et cetera. How is it safer now with these companies, with the geologic reports they get, with all the technologies we get now? Does it take a lot of the guesswork out of it, or is the data and the equipment and tools to figure that out only as good as the person using them?
Look, a lot of techniques, a lot of tools we use in geology and exploration have improved over time. So yes, there's been significant improvements, especially in the world of geophysics and geochemistry, where we have direct tools that are used to look for buried mineralization. Look, today, in this day and age, a lot of places on this planet have been literally scoured by people looking for superficial deposits, things that are literally outcropping. They're sticking out of the ground. And most of those have been found in many places, not all, but many places. Okay. Now, what are we left with? Well, we're left with the ones that are buried, and those require more sophisticated techniques. So yes, we do have tools and constant innovation that's being brought into the space, but nothing's easy. Okay, this is a very high risk business, and the interpretations and work that geologists like myself do in the mining companies that support those geologists, it's not for the faint of heart. Okay, this is a high risk business, but boy, if you find stuff, and fortunately these tools help us find things better, the rewards can be great.
How complicated is it these days to discover a world-class deposit? Obviously, most of it's underground. I'm sure that complicates things a lot more.
It does. Look, it's not like the old days. There was if you look at the gold space in particular, there was a boom starting around the end of the 1970s into the early 1980s, when you saw a huge amount of money come into the exploration side of the gold mining industry. And it was at all levels. It was in junior startup companies, but it was also in the major mining companies. And you saw people run out and make a large number of discoveries very quickly. These were usually deposits that were outcropping. Okay, so they were easier to find in most respects. And there was a huge string of just incredible success in discovery of new deposits during the 1980s into the mid 1990s. But then things went quiet. The gold market turned south in the mid 1990s. We had Bre-X, which also, deterred a lot of investment in this space. And you saw a quiet period for nearly a decade. Now it did pick up again in the mid 2000s and improved. But I would say overall, in the past 15, 20 years, there's been a lack of success in exploration. So that goes right back to the comments I made earlier about new technologies, and we're starting to see an improvement in exploration success and discovery here recently. But we need to go through that second boom here and literally see a lot of capital come into this space that's allocated and well allocated, not just going out and drilling willy-nilly or squandered away, like it. I hate to say, but the last cycle between 2009 and 11, I think a lot of money was wasted. All right, we need to not do that again. We need to focus like a laser, and hopefully we're on the cusp of seeing a new renaissance, if you will, of exploration success. But this time, probably from majority of which will be blind discoveries.
How do you think inflation's currently affecting the market? Obviously, historically gold is anti-inflationary. It's people tend to buy physical, at least gold and silver, to protect their buying power and wealth. How do you think the issues we're seeing with inflation globally affect the paper market in terms of mining companies?
Well, look, gold, we've been on a path of, we'll say, I don't want to say peak gold, because I'm not necessarily 100% convinced we've hit that yet, but we've been on a path of not a lot of growth, especially organic growth in the gold mining space in terms of production lately. What does this, current inflationary environment mean? Well, look, it will likely result in an increasing gold price over the next, say, decade or so. I can feel it in my bones, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier in this call, is that I think this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity. But it's not going to be straight up. Okay, a lot of people think, okay, tomorrow I want instant gratification. Where's my prize here? Gold's going to be $3,000 an ounce or $5,000 an ounce, or pick your favorite number, and I'm going to be wealthy beyond my wildest dreams, and everything's going to be hunky dory. Well, look, life's never like that. I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but I would rather see the gold price increase steadily over the next decade or so. I would like to see rational pricing, because if it goes asymptotic, that usually never ends well. We want to see gold prices outpace cost of production. Okay, inflation isn't just about seeing the gold price go up, but it also means that the cost of producing an ounce of gold is also going to go up. And I think we're starting to see that here recently. We saw, for instance, Freeport announce the costs that they're experiencing and producing, in that case, copper, but also gold, are going up. Well, we need to see commodity prices keep well ahead of that so that we can see a robust period in the mining space, a period in which, capital does come back to the space. It's allocated towards exploration. It's allocated towards building new mines so that we have a future ahead of us.
Like, what do you think would be the catalyst for the amount of money to come into the gold and silver sector to really drive it into a mania? Like, is it going to take us to get over 10% inflation? Is it a black swan event? Is it a bank goes belly up and everyone loses their money? Like, what do you think it takes to wake people up?
Okay, let's pick this apart. First of all, your average American investor doesn't have a clue about how to invest in gold, metal gold, or physical gold, or gold mining. Okay, now, yes, they can get into the Wall Street Journal or whatever. They can do some research on the internet and quickly find, hey, there's Newmont, there's Barrick, and I'll throw money into that. That's easy, but can they get exposure to junior mining? No, not without doing a lot more digging. Okay, we need to educate people. All right, so guys like yourself, good case of let's get out and talk about this, because it is an opportunity for people. I truly think that people who listen and they understand, and they don't necessarily need to invest every single penny they have into physical gold, but if they put some into physical gold and then, maybe take part of their portfolio and put it into junior mining, I think it could return huge value for them. Now, what kind of events are coming? I don't have a crystal ball, but I would say there's a lot of events facing us. I mean, we are facing an unprecedented time on this planet. We're seeing currencies starting to unravel. I think, currency crises are certainly somewhere on the distant horizon. I would say, geopolitical tensions, social tensions are certainly part of what's coming at us here soon, but also supply constraints. And it's not just COVID anymore. Look, we've had fundamental breakdowns in certain supply chains, and we've seen a gross undercapitalization of things like the mining industry and other commodity industries for decades now. Okay, it's not a little problem. There has been a literal drought of money coming into some of these industries, whether it's mining, gold, copper, whatever, or if it's, agriculture, or, pick your favorite commodity like lumber, whatever. You haven't seen money come into these spaces for a long time. What does it mean? We're going to have some hard times ahead. Okay. And it means more inflation. Now, what does it mean for gold price? Don't know. But I think it's very realistic. We could see a price north of $5,000, perhaps even $10,000 over the next decade or so. Why do I say that? Look at the period from January 2001 to September 2011. Gold went from about $256 an ounce in January 2001 to just a tad over $1,900 an ounce, where it peaked in September of 2011. That's a sevenfold increase. So where are we right now? 1900 and change? Well, a sevenfold increase, you can see where that would land. Okay, so it is very realistic. We're going to see those kind of price increases. God help us if it happens too fast, because then people are going to feel a lot of pain very quickly. And I certainly hope that it's a little more orderly than just a complete and utter disaster. But seems like a lot of politicians are trying to make it as big a disaster as they possibly can right now. It's heartbreaking to watch. So.
Sometimes you need the problem to save the people from, right? Exactly.
That's correct. Yes.
Question for you about the stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine. Does a lot of gold and silver come out of those countries, and them being embroiled in this war, do you think it could cause a shortage to drive the price up, or is that not a thing?
Look, Ukraine is not a significant gold producer. Russia is. Okay, Russia does have significant gold production, and at this point, from what I understand, it's virtually all bought by the central bank. and very wisely. I mean, can you imagine if our government here in the United States would do something that smart? God forbid. So look, it basically has taken that component of gold production out of the world. Production. I think Russia produces on the order of 3 or 4 million ounces per year right now. Well, there's about 93 million ounces being produced yearly in the world, which would include Russia. Now, take that out of the picture. You do have less gold available to the broader market outside of Russia. So, yeah, I suppose in that sense, there's less gold available for investors outside of Russia to purchase. But in reality, I think that I'm going to turn your question around a little bit. I think what you're seeing as a product of the Russia-Ukraine situation isn't necessarily the tangible or direct impact, the gold supply and things like this. I think the most important takeaway is that by fixing the ruble to gold price, you can see it's had a profound effect on the stability of the ruble. I don't know what's going to happen over the next few weeks or months or whatever, but right now I'm looking at the ruble, and for the past, say, 4 or 5 weeks, it's been remarkably stable. And in fact, gold price has stabilized in the Russian ruble. It's fixed basically. Whereas it's risen in the U.S. dollar gold price and other countries, yen, look at that. And then emerging economies, there's a lot of currencies right now that are suffering badly. So, wow, I mean, the world's going to learn a lesson here. Russia, set politics aside, Russia, by embracing gold, seems to have found some way to effectively, how should we put it, stabilize or give them strength to their currency. And I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, again, if the U.S. government was buying gold production from U.S. gold mines, that would be a good thing for this country.
Yeah, but no, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, and that's a case study for everyone watching. Like, hey, they tried to hit them with sanctions and collapse their monetary system, but they're able to save themselves with gold. So I think you hit the nail on the head there. One thing I can tell you is that nothing's certain. And if 2021 and 2022, the only thing I'm waiting for is like an alien invasion. I feel like that would finish off the trifecta. We went from global pandemic to World War III, alien invasion. That sounds about right. But what talking about companies, and I low key stalked you online. I don't want to admit that, but I looked deep into what you were doing, the companies you have interest in, and I can tell you. And tell me if I got any of this wrong. There is a lot of fake news on the internet, but from what I could tell, is a company that you've chosen to invest in, and I'd say heavily invest in a few times, to the tune of maybe millions of dollars, is Blue Lagoon Resources. And my question to you is, one is, if that's accurate, is it because you're a geologist that you did that? Is there something that excited you about their geology? Like, what is it that it attracted you to that company?
It's a very simple answer. Yes. I look at detail at the prospect of the company and their ability to move it forward. Okay. They got to have a good project, in other words, a district scale play, like a district scale landholding that has the geology to support potential discovery of a multi-million ounce gold deposit. But they also have a good technical team and willingness to pursue exploration, especially, we're what we call a friendly activist company. We like to point out to the company what we think they should be doing with the money that we put in. Okay. We say, hey, I think, I see opportunity here to find, in the case of Blue Lagoon, a multi-million ounce gold deposit, if we're lucky. And that's the geology of which resembles some kind of unique deposits that are scattered around the world. They're called alkaline gold systems. And they happen to be related to intrusions that came up through the Earth's crust, and they happen to be rich in gold. And as they cool and crystallize, the gold comes out of solutions that are emitted by the intrusion, and it basically creates very high grade veins. There's examples of this type of deposit in Colombia, the Buritica deposit. There's examples in New Guinea. Porgera. There's one here in Colorado called Cripple Creek. So these systems are rare, but they tend to be prolific. And when I looked at Blue Lagoon, I said, wow, these guys might actually have one of these rare unicorn type gold systems, this alkaline gold system. And with luck, they should find a very high grade vein system by doing some drilling in certain areas. And Bill Cronk, their geologist, and I met about the time we took this investment. We discussed exploration plans. Bill's been implementing those. He's been drilling in the right places. And guess what? They're finding very high grade veins and sheeted veins, multiple veins. In some holes, they have 3 or 4 veins. These would be high grade structures that are encountered in each hole that, are yielding very, very high grades, half an ounce per ton type stuff, sometimes even over an ounce per ton. This is exactly what we like to see. And I think they're on, it's just beginning. Okay. They're just drilling, and they have been since September, but I think this is just beginning. I think by the end of this year, maybe early next year, you'll start to see a lot more people, get their attention on this story, especially major mining companies who are, guess what, looking for new high grade discoveries in safe jurisdictions like British Columbia. So that's my thesis. That's why we're invested in this company. And so long as they stick to the script, they spend the money where they put their money where their mouth is, drill in the locations that we've discussed, and we're 100% behind them.
Now, when you talk about high grade, is that only the amount per ton, or does that also include the purity of the gold?
When you're talking about grades in terms of geology and mining and stuff, you're talking about the amount of gold in the rock that you're drilling through. So it's not about the purity of the gold itself, like the little gold particles in the ground. It's about the amount of gold you have per ton of rock in the ground. And when we talk about half an ounce to an ounce per ton in high grade veins, that's easily economic. Those are very, very good grades that can be mined. Typically can be mined at a good margin in an underground mine.
Yeah, and I assume the deeper you go, the better, the higher grade the gold would have to be to even make it worth it, right?
Generally, yes.
Okay,
and you have to have a lot of it. You got to have. Like you don't want just one vein, you want multiple veins. And that's what Blue Lagoon is seeing. So the fact they have sheeted veins, very, very good.
And then side question here, what is the purity of gold that's usually found in mines? Is it just all over the place, or say the question again, the purity of gold? Like 18K or 24K or 20K.
Like I say, in the ground, the particles of gold, they might, like the natural alloy that the gold particles have might be 10, 20, 30% other metals.
Okay.
Oftentimes you see, but that really doesn't matter, because it's how much the gross content of gold is in the rock that matters. Because you got to mine that rock and then put it through a process to extract all the gold out, irregardless of what it's combined with. It doesn't really matter, but you want to extract that, and then you refine pure gold from that. So the purity of the gold in situ, like in the ground, as it's in particles, that doesn't matter so much. It's more about how much gold there is in the ground.
So what do you think the upside potential is then with Blue Lagoon? In terms of what you've seen so far, like, has only the tip of the iceberg been discovered? Like, what do you think is going on there?
It has, yeah. Look, they have an existing resource, about 250,000 ounces in the main vein at Dome Mountain, and that's wide open at depth. So they got lots of potential. It's also open along strike, so the length of the vein hasn't been fully explored. But what's really interesting is between this chance zone, which is kind of in a bit of a covered area, not quite as easily seen, geology wise, they found a whole bunch of veins underneath this area that are, again, sheeted. So they're just one vein after another. Okay. Now that's encouraging, because that means you have, like, if you put a mine down and then start drifting underground, to start exploiting these veins, the more you have, the merrier. Okay. Because that means your costs per vertical meter aren't so bad if you just had one vein. If you
Right.
put a lot of development, that's a lot of cost. Okay, if you have one vein, you got to make that one. All the pressures on one vein. But when you got like a dozen veins, call it, nope, much easier situation. So I think this thing has potential to be a multi-million ounce system. Like 3, 4, 5 million ounces, easily possible, maybe even bigger. And I think that the number of veins and the depth at which they're hitting them right now tells us this is that kind of system.
What are your impressions? And like, I feel like you could have all the gold in the world and all the potential, but unless you've got a good captain at the wheel, so to speak, or management and leadership, it could all be for naught. What's your impressions with and I just thought of this question because you said you actually spoke with their leadership. What's your impressions on them and their style and experience? Do you think they've got what it takes to take the ship through the stormy seas?
Yeah, Bill is certainly experienced and seasoned. He's got a good team operating at site. They've been able to get good meters out of the drill program, and log the core, get it through the lab, so forth and so on. So on the technical side, very good. Rana, who runs the company, he's a corporate type. He's used to running different types of companies, not just mining, but he seems to have a pretty good business sense around this whole endeavor. Now, they were focused on making a small mine out of the existing vein when I first talked to him, and that's still a viable business model. But I don't think it's the be all and end all of this project. I think the exploration is what's going to deliver the huge value. So, I've had discussions with Rana and Bill about this over the past year since we've invested. And I think by and large, they are focused on the exploration upside and the value that will return. Now, I haven't said, hey, don't do the small mining endeavor, but I think they understand that most of the dollars that have come in need to go towards exploration, and that's a good outcome.
Rana, and it's Rana Vig, I believe, for all the viewers watching. I actually interviewed him on the channel maybe a year ago, and I was impressed with how he spoke of the company, their philosophy, etc. And I'm glad to have you on today because now I feel like we're getting the other side of the story. Like, okay, you could have great management and great intentions and great business plan, but if there's no gold in the ground, there's going to be a problem. So I love getting your perspective from the geology perspective. So that kind of leads me into another question to those people listening now who might be thinking about becoming shareholders like yourself. In your opinion, and obviously we're not financial advisors, but in your opinion, what are the main reasons to do so?
And look, what we look for, it goes back to what we look for, or what I look for in companies. I like to find companies that have district scale land plays. They got to have good grades. In other words, would translate to a high margin deposit, meaning profitable. I want them to have a good technical team and the geology to explore. I want something that at the end of the day, when they make discovery, is going to want to be bought by a major mining company or a mid-tier gold producer or something like this, because that's where most of the value is created in junior mining companies. And that is the opportunity here. If you look, it's early days for them. It's they've just been drilling since September. They got their first significant assays in, I believe, late last year, early this year. They had something like 7 meters of a half an ounce in one hole. And the good news is still coming in. They had some good news last week. But the opportunity is, as gold prices go up and you want the most exposure to that rising gold price, look at the junior space. Okay, look at solid stories like Blue Lagoon, where they've already demonstrated they're making discovery. These are the companies that are going to get traction, especially as we the gold price goes up and the M&A cycle kicks in a year or two when the majors start shopping around. And that's your opportunity here. You want to buy in now so that when the company has drilled sufficiently to build a resource, but also attract a major, you can sell out at a premium.
And I know you're a busy guy and you got a bunch of meetings back to back, but I want to hit you with one more question here before we close out. What do you think is the most important thing to somebody who's finding this video and they might be brand new in the gold and silver sector? What's your advice you'd give to a person who's either thinking about stacking physical gold or silver for the first time, or investing into a mining company? Like, what do you think is critical for them to know, and what you would have loved to know right off the bat?
Yeah, look, I have nothing against buying physical gold and silver, but I do see that as an insurance policy. Basically, it's protection for yourself against rising, inflation and stuff. Now, one buys insurance for their house, but they don't put their entire paycheck towards it. They take a small premium every month and pay an insurance policy. That's the way gold is. Okay, gold is like buying an insurance policy. But if you really want leverage to the gold space, it's looking at the junior companies that are making discoveries where you can see a huge amount of wealth created. It's very risky though. Okay, so the best advice I have for people is to educate yourself. Make sure that you don't just jump in this and start picking stocks willy-nilly. Look, listen, read the reports the companies put out, read their materials, talk with the company. A lot of companies you should speak with, and then listen to people who might have things to say about the companies, geologists like myself, and try to get as smart as you can, because the more better educated you are and the smarter you are, the more likely are you to going to have a good outcome at the end of the day.
Well, you know what, Dr. Hennigh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your wisdom and guidance in that. And I'm actually looking out the window to my backyard right now, and I do see a little hump of dirt and rock, and I'm thinking it could be an alkaline gold intrusion. So I just booked your ticket, so I'll see you in the morning so we can dig down and assay and see if we hit the mother lode. How does that sound?
That sounds good. You go have fun.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it straight from who I called the Godzilla of gold and silver geologists, Dr. Hennigh. Thank you so much for joining us, and what do we say?
Catch you on the next one.
Catch you on the next one. Woo!
One stacker.